Coming up on this edition of Cogeco News, the latest on COVID-19 from MPP Vic Fedeli and many other sources, of course. Health Minister Christine Elliott reacts to the growing fatality rates in senior citizen homes, and a special art fundraiser on this day is successful. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to this Friday edition of Cogeco News. I'm Greg Astor-Brooks. Well, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has said no to any openings of Ontario's border with the U.S. At the same time, there have been rising tensions, especially south of the border, to reopen the economy. Joining us via Skype is Nipissing MPP and Economic Development and Trade Minister Vic Fedeli to talk about his government's latest handling of the health crisis. Who knows?
Yeah, I just got off a call with the U.S. Consul General, and we spoke about, we've been friends for a while. We spoke about the differences between Canadians and Americans, and we handle things differently. But we agree on one thing, certainly. Everybody is extremely eager to get back to some semblance of normal. But in the meantime, we're trying to provide things to make life a little easier. We announced this week emergency childcare for frontline workers. We announced that auto insurance companies can now get rebates that was not allowed before, so they didn't use them as an inducement, but now they can to give families a break. Electricity prices are going to be frozen on May 1. They won't be going up on the scheduled May 1 period. So we're doing what we can to continue to bring some relief to families.
I'll ask you the same question I asked MP Rhoda on Thursday. The government has resources, yes, but eventually those resources are going to run out financially, is what I'm talking about. Is there a fear that the deficit will be so high it's going to take generations to pay it down after what's gone on and what's had to been done this year by your government to try to keep people, home safe and not losing their homes and not losing their livelihoods?
Well, in Ontario, because of the last 15 years, we've already had a debt that is generational now. So we've put $17 billion worth of resources in. The one thing I have to say, we've been working very well with the federal government in terms of who does what, making sure we don't duplicate things. We have put the monies in. For instance, $200 for anybody with a child under 12 automatically comes. If you're a senior, a low-income senior, your check is automatically doubled. So we're doing our thing. The feds are doing their things. We talk every day to make sure we're not duplicating each other. But Premier Ford has said we will spare no resources for the people of Ontario. So yes, it will be generational, to your point. But when we're talking about families, we want to make sure that there's food on the table and a roof over the head of everybody in Ontario. And we'll do whatever it takes to get it done.
Ontario's health ministry is on the hot seat about the flood of deaths in senior care facilities across Ontario since the pandemic has started. In a conversation with our James Bowler out of our Muskoka affiliate, Health Minister Christine Elliott talks about government plans to lessen the alarming fatality levels.
There is a problem in our long-term care homes that there have been a number of outbreaks of COVID-19. This is a very vulnerable population, so we've heard several of the public health experts say that we need to bring an iron band around them. So what we're trying to do is further protect them to make sure that we test all residents of long-term care homes where there has been an outbreak, and we're also going to conduct some testing in places where there have not been any outbreaks so that we understand a little bit better about how it does advance. So we want to make sure that we can do more testing. We also want to make sure that we can bring in more people to work in long-term care homes, whether that's from home and community care sector or the hospital sector. We know that they need more assistance, and we need to make sure that we have the best education available for staff on the use of personal protective equipment. They are all now going to be required to wear surgical masks throughout their shifts. So we need to give them some more education on proper use of this and also proper cleaning and other protocols.
As we hear from Minister Elliott, the current response to this virus will have lasting implications on planning and preparedness for future outbreaks.
This experience with COVID-19 has given us some specific insights into concerns. One is the fact that there are a number of people who are working at 2 or 3 perhaps long-term care homes or retirement homes, other homes of congregate living, and so now there is a requirement that they only work at one location. That will be really important for infection control going forward. Even though this is a temporary measure, it is something that I think that we need to examine in greater detail once we've gone through the pandemic.
Back in North Bay, the North Bay Police Service has been handing out warnings only to those who aren't following the new social distancing guidelines. That was as of the beginning of this week. However, that could change.
To have our officers trained, and some of our special constables are trained and out in the community as well. And what we're doing right now is educating people. So for a 1-week period from the 5th to the 11th of April, we had 85 complaints in regards to COVID. Now that could be some of it was education. Questions. Some of it was where do people stand as far as businesses are concerned, but some of them were people that were not abiding by some of the new rules that conduct is banned on, such as groups of over 5. So our officers have been out there. They issued 32 warnings in that 1-week period. It's in contravention of the act in provincial legislation. You're looking at a minimum $750 fine. I mean, with people not working as much as they once were, $750 is a lot of money at any time. So our chief and command staff are assessing things on an ongoing basis, and if people aren't going to listen, well, we're going to have to take it to the next level then, because we need to really enforce this. People really need to follow these rules.
And during this time period, Schultz has been very busy warning people about online scams connected to COVID-19, and he himself was almost a victim of one.
Earlier this week from a gentleman named William, who told me that our N95 mask and glove procurement was in. I almost went to the attachments, then realized we don't use the N95 mask here, and I don't have any oversight on what we purchase here. But as it turned out, it was a scammer. Passed that on to North Bay's Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, as well as some other people within our organization to let them know that the scammers are working from home too. They're hitting us as well.
A North Bay company is waiting on federal approval and funding to become a regional decontamination facility for highly sought after personal protective equipment. Best estimates suggest 100,000 masks and shields could be processed per day if all goes according to plan.
There's a global scramble on to obtain personal protective equipment right now. Governments are engaging in bidding wars for limited supplies, and Nor Environmental has expertise in the area of decontamination, but primarily in the area of personnel decontamination. So what we're looking to do is pivot from personnel decontamination to the personal protective equipment, or what's known now as PPE. And we have a process that's been FDA approved in the United States that's currently being deployed in California through our network that we could bring into effect here in Ontario. So our plan was to establish a regional decontamination center in North Bay to service all of the hospitals and first responders in Ontario.
And are you waiting for go-ahead from licensing or in terms of getting permits? How's that process to unfold?
At this stage, we have all we need to proceed with on the technical side. We have a network of vendors and equipment providers. What we're looking now is whether or not the provincial or the Canadian government deems this to be a priority. This is not a traditional business model, so it would require the funding of a government to bring it into operation.
And where would the decontamination be done?
Currently, we've given that we're from North Bay, we've identified 2 locations in North Bay. And those locations would be suitable to provide service to hospitals across Ontario. We would have to scale up as the demand increased, but initially it would be adequate for us to provide a regional service here in North Bay.
There has been a bear sighting near some residential areas on Airport Hill. This from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. They report a sighting on the trails near the Laurentian Ski Hill. For one, we also have reports of a bear sighting near homes at the intersection of Tower Drive and Little Down Lane. The authority reminds everyone, do not approach the bear in any way. Slowly back away if you see a bear in sight and wait for it to leave. If the bear does not leave, you can throw objects, wave your arms, make noise if you happen to have an air horn or you're a good whistler, and prepare, if you have it, to use bear spray. If you're near a building or vehicle, get inside as a precaution. Much more Cogeco News when we come back right after this. Welcome back, everybody. North Bay's Community Foundation is another charitable organization pitching in. It's raising money to assist area food banks. They are doing it in a different way to accommodate different times.
We are the North Bay Area Community Foundation, so it's important to us that we do hit some of those outlying areas too, and they are definitely in need too, and they are feeling the effects of this just as we are in the city of North Bay. We are giving $2,000 to the Mattawa Food Bank and $2,000 to the West Nipissing Food Bank. The food banks have really been hit hard at this point and seeing a huge surge in clientele. The Mattawa Food Bank, for instance, already services close to 20% of their population, and they shared with us that they are expecting an increase in clients from anywhere to 25 to 50% in their town. So with little resources, they definitely needed the bolstering that this fund was able to afford, and we're very thrilled and thankful to our donors that we've been able to share some resources with them.
Following this donation, I know you're always looking to the next. Are you pinpointing different organizations to assist through this COVID relief fund?
We're not specifically targeting any groups. We are asking that they are in the areas of food security and healthcare. What has been of utmost importance to the committee is that the dollars are going where there is an immediate impact being felt. So organizations that are seeing an increase in clientele perhaps or a decrease in resources, likely both because of COVID-19. So organizations that are feeling this strain and are seeing an effect immediately, that's where our committee really wants to spend the dollars and really make an impact.
And the support has been good. Are you confident with the support you're getting from the community for this specific fund?
Yeah, honestly, we're so grateful that we live in such a generous area, especially through our social media accounts. We've been receiving a lot of positive comments. We've got some larger donations and smaller donations, and everything counts. Every dollar put into the fund matters.
Local artist Maryanne Van Deusen has quite a following. The artist and art instructor hosted a Facebook Live training session today with proceeds going to the North Bay Regional Health Center Foundation. So far, $2,100 raised.
I really like to use a dirty brush, because what it's going to do is it's going to start to cross-contaminate colors the way I want. When we are working with the fire, we keep the colors pure. When we're working with the beach and creating browns and things like that, you want to make that color as organically blended as possible, meaning that rather than blending the perfect color on my palette, I'm just going to keep my brush nice and dirty and pick up color and smear it on, and it's going to mix on the canvas, it's going to mix with my brush, and what that's going to do is it's going to create a really nice organic look as opposed to pre-mixing the color and it goes in perfect.
Hundreds were on that presentation. Congratulations to Maryanne Van Deusen. Let's go to our COVID board. If you need some information on resources dealing with the health crisis, Canada.ca COVID-19, Ontario.ca Coronavirus, Telehealth Ontario, and myhealthunit.ca. Mr. Clark Heipel will have the complete weather forecast for you right after this.
Weather is brought to you by Canadore College. Great things happen here.
Welcome back to Cogeco News. I'm Clark Heipel here at the East Ferris War Memorial in Corbeil, just off Highway 94. I am here for your 5-day weather forecast brought to you by Canadore College. Also here to remind you to wear red on Fridays to show your support for the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces, and to remind you that April is Daffodil Month. Please give generously at cancer.ca. Yes, this war memorial, constructed in 2012, is one of the, if not the nicest war memorial in Northern Ontario. It honors current and former serving members of the Army, the Navy, as well as the Air Force. And there are names engraved into the bricks, individuals that have donated to help construct this war memorial, and it is one for the ages. When this coronavirus situation is over, make a point of coming down with family and friends and enjoying this park, but only when it's safe to do so. We have reached Friday. That means the weekend's in store, and Saturday is going to be a sunny day. We're still going to be below seasonal daytime highs for this time of year, but we'll warm up eventually. We're nearing the end stages of April. One more very important note before we get to your weather forecast. Next week, April 19th through the 25th, is National Volunteer Week, and we are honoring our dedicated volunteers here at Your TV. Over the past several days, we have been conducting interviews over Skype with our valued volunteers, and they're sharing their stories of how they got started volunteering and what they look forward to doing next. We look forward to inviting them all back once this coronavirus situation is over. Let's take a look at the 5-day forecast brought to you by Canadore College. Venturing overnight on this Friday night, it's going to be cold once again. -5 overnight, wind chill, a couple degrees colder, chance of flurries in the evening. On Saturday, the 18th of April, single-digit high of 8 degrees, but the skies will be clear for the most part. Clouds moving in the afternoon, and unfortunately, the clouds stick around for Saturday night, periods of rain heading into Sunday. On Sunday, the first day of National Volunteer Week, high 8 with rain, and a low, as I flip the page, of -12. Oh dear. On Monday, the new work week, don't want to think about that, but just in terms of the weather, high +3, low -3, clouds, and rain or snow overnight into Tuesday, the 21st, high +1, low -8 with snow. Turning the page back to the almanac, Thursday, we had a high of 2 above and a low of 7 below. The normals are 11 and 0. For the high and low. Well, there you have it. There is your 5-day weather picture. Do stay tuned. Greg Esterbrooks will have your sportscast right after this very short break.
Sports is brought to you by Tag Construction for all your construction needs.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. North Bay's Ryan Hunter getting ready for an NFL season that will be starting, well, in a most unusual fashion whenever it starts. Players are doing virtual workouts and virtual meetings from home. They're doing real workouts, but they're doing them in many different ways. Hunter and the Chiefs getting ready to defend their Super Bowl crown this fall. That is, if there is football. Ryan Hunter joins us via Skype from Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah, I guess the only positive of this whole situation is that it is our off season, and I mean, really, up until you start OTAs, everything is kind of normal, minus the ability of being able to go out in public. Obviously, once the season ends, everyone kind of breaks and goes to different states, different cities. They have different places that they go to train to. For me, I've always stayed here in Kansas City to train. We've used the facility every off season I've been here, but since they shut down the facility like mid to early March, I had to find a different workout avenue, which fortunately I had a few connections in the area that I've made throughout the years that were able to help me out as personal trainers to continue to work out throughout the whole pandemic. So I've still been working out almost every day, probably 6 days a week for the past month, just away from the training facility, and try to stay as normal as possible. We've been doing hill runs, sprint work, conditioning, and a lot of weightlifting stuff, Olympic stuff, balance, mobility, whatever it is. I mean, he trains guys like Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and DeMarcus Robinson. So if he's good enough for them, he's good enough for me.
I wanted to ask you, though, in regards to working with your teammates, you can't do that right now. OTAs, organized team activities, supposed to be taking place. They're not. What about a sport like this, which needs so much cohesion? It's going to be strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough. We start Monday actually with virtual meetings with our coaches. So everyone got their iPad shipped out to them that we have during the season. So instead of doing meetings in person, we'll be doing them over iPad Zoom calls throughout the week. So OTAs start like they normally would, which would have been Monday. It's just instead of being in the facility, we're on the Zoom calls with our coaches. And so at this time for OTAs, all we really do is lift and meet. So fortunately, we have a little bit of time before we technically start practices where we can still get mental work in while working out at whatever facilities that we're using. So luckily we're not losing too much. It's just you're not able to be there in person, which will be a little bit different because no one's done this before. But, definitely excited to kind of start off the season and, get your mind off something different than the coronavirus.
You don't know about the start of this training camp or the season at this point. There is talk that teams could play in empty stadiums. What does that do to your thought process?
Yeah, it'll be weird. Luckily when I was at Bowling Green during our November Action games, we were pretty used to empty stadiums. So for me, it won't be too difficult. But obviously, Arrowhead with 90,000 people is a little bit different than Arrowhead with nobody in it.
Let's hope it doesn't get to that, but who knows? The Lakers hockey team keeps recruiting, and the men's team has added a couple of local well-known players. Former Powassan Voodoo Parker Bowman is now a member of the Lakers. Bowman, a top scorer in the NOJHL, and this guy, Chad Deneau, who spent half a year with North Bay, signed on with the Lakers after finishing off his OHL career here. He had 6 goals last year with North Bay after coming over from Peterborough. That is it for news, weather, and sports for this day and for this week here on your TV. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again with more Cogeco News live at 5 on Monday.